I looked up at the night sky and just, I don't know, felt small, like really small. All those stars, makes you think about how it all began, right?
Definitely. I mean, it's kind of overwhelming when you think about it, right? The universe, everything.
Yeah.
How did it all get here?
And that's exactly what we're going to try and tackle today. We're diving deep into the story of life on Earth.
Oh, big topic.
Yeah, big topic, huge actually. But luckily, we have a guide. We're taking chapter 6, that's the one about evolution from this biology textbook, as our roadmap for this deep dive. It promises to take us all the way from the Big Bang to, well, us,
Yeah.
humans.
Sounds ambitious.
It is. Billions of years crammed into one conversation. But hey, we like a challenge. So, the Big Bang. It all started there, right? Everything you know, everything we see, came from this single point that just exploded outwards almost 20 billion years ago.
It's almost impossible to really grasp, isn't it? The scale of it, the energy. But from that chaos came the simplest elements, hydrogen and helium. And then gravity, that familiar force, started to pull those elements together. Over, well, billions of years, we got galaxies.
And somewhere in that vast cosmic dance, our solar system formed, including our own little planet, Earth, around 4.5 billion years ago, that is. But early Earth wasn't exactly a paradise. No oxygen, molten surface, volcanic eruptions constantly. Not exactly postcard material.
Nope, wouldn't recommend a vacation there. But those harsh conditions, as wild as they sound, they were essential for life to eventually develop. See, the molten Earth released gases, think water vapor, methane, carbon dioxide, ammonia, that's our primordial atmosphere. And then things started to get really interesting.
Okay, I'm hooked. What happened?
Sunlight, it's the key. It broke down some of that water vapor, releasing, you guessed it, oxygen, and this oxygen reacted with all those other gases in the atmosphere. Eventually, we get the ozone layer. Now that's crucial, blocks all that harmful radiation from the sun.
So slowly, Earth was transforming from a fiery hellscape to, something that could actually support life. But here's a question that bugs me. How did we get from, well, non-living stuff, rocks and gases and such, to actual living, breathing creatures?
Ah, yeah, the big question. Used to be people thought life could just spontaneously appear, like, leave some clothes out and boom, mice.
Spontaneous generation, right?
Exactly. Thankfully, though, science marched on. We have Louis Pasteur to thank for that. His experiments proved, without a doubt, that life has to come from, well, other life. No magic poofs.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But then, where did the very first life come from? It's a chicken and egg problem, isn't it?
It is. But there's a fascinating theory. Two scientists, Oparin and Haldane, they proposed that early Earth, with all its craziness, all those gases, the heat, the volcanic activity, it created the perfect conditions for something really special to happen.
What, like a miracle?
Almost. They thought those conditions could make inorganic matter, just simple molecules, turn into organic molecules. The building blocks of life, essentially.
Like cooking up life in a primordial soup.
That's the idea. And get this, in the 1950s, a scientist named Stanley Miller, he actually tested it. He built this experiment, simulated early Earth, gases, water vapor, electric sparks for lightning, and guess what?
He created life. Tiny little bacteria swimming around.
Not quite, but almost as impressive. He found amino acids. The things that make up proteins. It wasn't life itself, but man, it was close. It showed that those basic ingredients for life, they could arise from non-living stuff.
Okay, that's mind-blowing. So, from the Big Bang, we have the Earth, and then boom, we've got these essential molecules for life forming in some primordial soup. Sounds like a pretty good recipe, right?
It is, and it gets even better. Those early life forms, they were probably simple single-celled things, kind of like bacteria, but they appeared in the oceans around 3 billion years ago. They were the pioneers, you could say, paving the way for all the incredible life we see today.
And to understand how we got from those simple single-celled organisms to, well, us, we got to talk about the guy who changed how we think about life itself, Charles Darwin.
Ah, Darwin. The HMS Beagle, his voyages, and that groundbreaking theory of evolution. Truly revolutionary stuff.
Yeah, everyone's heard the name.
Yeah.
But not everyone really gets what Darwin did, how he changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
What was so revolutionary about his ideas?
Well, before Darwin, most people thought species were fixed. They didn't change. They were just, how they were, always. But Darwin, during his travels, he saw similarities, striking similarities, between living creatures and fossils of extinct ones. He started to question everything.
And from that questioning came his theory.
Right. It all clicked when he realized that within any species, there's variation. Not all individuals are the same. Some might be faster, stronger, better camouflaged, whatever. And in the struggle to survive, well, those with an edge, they're more likely to, survive, reproduce, and pass on those advantages to their offspring.
Survival of the fittest, right. But I guess fittest doesn't always mean strongest.
Not at all. Fittest means best suited to their environment. It's all about tiny advantages, little things that make a difference in surviving and having babies. And over many generations, those little changes add up. You get big changes in a population.
Like nature's constantly running these experiments, trying out different variations, and only the ones that work best in their environment, well, they survive.
Perfect analogy. That's natural selection in a nutshell. This constant back and forth between, the variety within a species and the pressures from their environment. That's what shapes life. That's what drives evolution.
So Darwin had this brilliant idea, but how do we know he was right? What's the proof that evolution really happened?
Oh, there's tons of evidence from all sorts of fields. Paleontology, anatomy, molecular biology. One of the most convincing pieces comes from fossils.
Fossils like those dinosaur skeletons you see in museums.
Yeah.
How do they prove evolution?
They're like snapshots of life from the past. They give us clues about how organisms have changed over millions of years. And they're not random either. Fossils found in different rock layers, they show a clear progression from simple life to more complex forms. And with radioactive dating, we can even figure out how old those fossils are, build a timeline of life's history.
Like digging through layers of a cake, each layer a different time period. Cool.
Yeah.
What else? What other evidence is there?
Well, we can look at the anatomy of different animals, even creatures that look totally different on the outside. They often have amazingly similar bone structures underneath. Take a whale fin, a bat wing, a cheetah's leg, and a human arm.
Whoa, wait, really? What could those possibly have in common?
The bone arrangement. It's the same basic structure, even though they're used for totally different things. Swimming, flying, running, grasping.
It's like they all share the same blueprint, just modified for different uses. So
Yeah.
that points to a common ancestor, right?
You got it. It's called homology. And it screams evolution. And then there's molecular evidence, which basically looks at DNA, RNA, and proteins. The more similar those molecules are between species, well, the closer they're related, evolutionarily speaking.
Like comparing the instruction manuals for different organisms, the more similar the instructions, the more likely they're related. Makes sense. Okay, so I'm seeing how all this evidence fits together, really paints a clear picture of evolution. But one thing I always get stuck on, it's just evolution is so slow, right? Tiny changes over millions of years. How could that lead to such huge transformation?
That's a common stumbling block. Hard to imagine, I get it. Our lifespans are just a blink compared to evolutionary time. But there are actually cases where evolution happens much faster than you might think. Ever heard of the peppered moth? They're in England.
Vaguely rings a bell. What's their story?
Well, before the Industrial Revolution, most of them were light-colored. They blended right in with the trees, all covered in lichen. But then pollution, from the factories, it darkened the trees. Suddenly, those light moths were easy pickings for predators. The darker moths, they were rare before, but now camouflage. They blended in, they had an advantage.
So the environment changed, and the moths that were better suited, well, they thrived. That's natural selection, but sped up.
Exactly. Within decades, the whole population shifted. Darker moths became dominant. It's a perfect example of how a changing environment can, force evolution to work faster. And it's not just moths. We see it with antibiotic resistance in bacteria, too.
Right. We keep using antibiotics, and the bacteria that can resist them, they survive, they reproduce. We're basically making super bacteria.
It's a real problem, but it shows how evolution is always happening. It's not just some ancient history. It's happening all around us right now. We're even part of it, shaping it in ways we don't always realize. Back again, ready for more of this evolution deep dive. We were just talking about how the environment can really shake things up, right? Make evolution work faster, like with those peppered moths.
Yeah, those moths were a great example. It's crazy, huh? How just a change in color can be the difference between, surviving or not.
Mm.
But I'm thinking, okay, those moths adapted, but how do those kinds of changes lead to totally new species? Like, where do new species even come from?
Okay, good question. That's where we got to talk about something called adaptive radiation. Imagine you've got a species, maybe some birds, and they find themselves in a brand new environment. Let's say they end up on a bunch of different islands, each island with its own unique stuff, different food, different predators,
Like those finches Darwin studied, right?
Yeah.
The Galapagos Islands, I remember reading about those. They all had different beaks depending on what island they were on.
Bingo! That's adaptive radiation in action. Those finches, they all started from one common ancestor, but on those islands, They adapted to different food sources. Their beaks changed shape over time so they could get to the food they needed. And eventually, those differences, they became so big that finches from different islands, they couldn't even breed with each other anymore. New species.
So it's like evolution took the basic finch, the original model, and then tweaked it, made variations, a whole bunch of different tools for surviving on different islands. Pretty cool.
But what about when, like, totally different animals end up looking similar? I'm thinking sharks and dolphins. Sharks are fish, dolphins are mammals, but they've both got those streamlined bodies perfect for swimming fast.
Ah, excellent point. That's what we call convergent evolution. It's not because they're related, but because they live in similar environments, face the same challenges.
Yeah.
Evolution kind of stumbles upon the same solution multiple times.
So, like, evolution saying, hey, this streamlined shape works great in the water. Let's use it for sharks. Let's use it for dolphins. Doesn't matter if they're related. Exactly. And we see that pattern pop up again and again. Like, think about those marsupials in Australia. They've been isolated for millions of years, but they've evolved these crazy similar forms to mammals in other parts of the world. Marsupial moles that look just like regular moles. Marsupial wolves. It's wild.
It's like evolution is running the same play in different places, different actors, but the same storyline.
Okay, enough about marsupials. Let's talk about us humans. The evolution of humans, I mean. That's got to be the most interesting story of all, right?
You bet. This is where we finally get to see how it all led to us, right? Like that moment in the museum when you finally reach the exhibit about humans.
Okay.
All right, so where do we start? Well, we got to rewind the clock way back, millions of years ago. Back then, our ancestors, they were primates like Dryopithecus and Ramapithecus. Think kind of ape-like, living in forests, swinging through trees, eating fruits and leaves. They were the starting point for our branch of the family tree, you could say.
So, like, our really, really distant relatives, the ones who took those first steps down the path to becoming human, what were those first steps like? So over time, environments changed. Some of those primates, they started spending more time on the ground. And this shift, it led to some really important changes. The biggest one, bipedalism. Walking upright on two legs.
Walking on two legs must have been a pretty big deal.
Oh, yeah, a total game changer. Freed up our hands to carry food, tools, all sorts of things. And it gave us a whole new view, literally, of the world. It changed our skeletons, too, our hips, feet. Everything had to adapt to this new way of moving.
So imagine these early hominids taking their first wobbly steps on two legs, not knowing that, well, that's what would set us on the path to becoming human. Pretty cool. When did those early hominids start to look a bit more, well, human?
Okay, so one of the big names here is Australopithecus. They were living in East Africa around 3 to 4 million years ago. Still pretty small, but definitely walking upright, and their brains bigger than their earlier ape-like ancestors. They're a big step towards us, definitely.
Australopithecus, like a missing link almost, between the tree dwellers and, well, us. What came after them?
So then we get Homo habilis, about 2 million years ago, nicknamed Handyman because, get this, they were the first to make and use stone tools. That's a sign of a brain that's getting more powerful, more capable.
Tool use. That feels like a real turning point, doesn't it? The moment we started to, really change the world around us.
Exactly. And then Homo erectus steps onto the scene about 1.5 million years ago. Bigger brains than Homo habilis. And get this, they are the first hominids to leave Africa. They spread out to Asia, Europe, real adventurers.
Whoa, so our ancestors were already, traveling the world back then. That's amazing, adapting to all those different environments. Who came next in the lineup?
Well, then it's the Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis, to be fancy. They were in Europe and parts of Asia from about 400,000 years ago. Super smart, great hunters, and there's even evidence that they cared for their sick and elderly. Pretty advanced.
Neanderthals. I've always been fascinated by them. Didn't we, breed with them? I swear I read that somewhere.
That's right, we did. Crazy, huh? Genetic studies show that modern humans, we definitely hooked up with Neanderthals. So a lot of us today, we actually carry a little bit of Neanderthal DNA. It's a reminder that, well, our history is messy. It's all tangled up.
Okay, that's wild. So where do we fit in? When did Homo sapiens show up? Us, I mean.
Okay, so modern humans, Homo sapiens, we popped up in Africa around 300,000 years ago. Even bigger brains than our predecessors. We developed complex language, are all those symbolic things that make us human, really.
So we're actually the newbies in this whole hominid story, relatively speaking. But what made us different? Why did we succeed when other hominids, like Neanderthals, eventually died out?
The million-dollar question. Scientists have been debating that for ages. No simple answer, really. Maybe it was our brains, even more powerful than the others. Maybe our language or our ability to cooperate really well. Maybe we were just better at adapting to lots of different environments. Who knows? It's a puzzle we're still trying to solve.
Okay, think about it. Those early Homo sapiens, walking around, exploring, painting on cave walls, talking to each other, they were the start of everything we are today. It's pretty incredible, huh?
It really is. It's mind-blowing how far we've come, from those first primates swaying through the trees to walking on two legs, from basic tools to all the crazy technology we have today. It's been a wild ride, this whole evolution thing. And here's the thing, it's not over. We're still evolving, still changing, responding to new pressures, new challenges.
Last time, we were talking about, well, us,
Yeah.
our story, the story of humans, from those early hominids all the way to Homo sapiens, modern humans.
Hmm.
It's amazing how our family tree goes back millions of years, and yet it feels like our story is just getting started, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Our physical evolution, it might be slowing down, but our culture, our technology, that's changing faster than ever. It's like a whole new set of challenges, new things we have to adapt to.
Right. It's not just about adapting to nature anymore. It's about adapting to this world that, well, we created.
So what were some of those big moments in like human cultural evolution? I'm especially curious about how we went from, small groups of hunter-gatherers to these huge complex societies we have today. What happened?
Well, we can't talk about human cultural evolution without talking about agriculture. Around 10,000 years ago, give or take, humans started to cultivate plants, domesticate animals. Might sound simple, but trust me, this was huge.
So instead of constantly searching for food, we started growing it ourselves.
Okay, but why was that such a big deal? Why did agriculture change everything?
Because it meant we could settle down, we could stay in one place, have a reliable source of food, and support way more people. And when you've got extra food, not everyone has to be a farmer, right? People could start specializing. Some folks made tools, some became artisans, well, they became leaders.
It's like agriculture was this domino that set everything else in motion,
Yeah.
a chain reaction of progress.
Exactly. Agriculture, it led to villages, towns, eventually cities. And with cities, you get trade, exchange of ideas between different groups.
Yeah.
It's the birth of civilization, really.
And as civilizations grew, well, new problems popped up,
Yeah.
right? How do you share resources? How do you settle disputes? Keep things running smoothly? That's when you start to get laws, governments, all those complex systems that, well, keep our societies functioning today.
Right on. And throughout all of this, the key for humans has been, communication, our ability to cooperate. Language, art, writing, these were all tools that helped us share knowledge, build relationships, create those complex social structures.
It's like we invented a new kind of evolution, not just about genes anymore, but about ideas, innovations. And that's still shaping us today, maybe even more than ever.
Absolutely. Just think about the printing press, the internet, and now AI. These technologies, they've changed how we talk to each other, how we learn, even how we think, and they're speeding everything up. It's a whole new world full of opportunities, but also, challenges. We're still figuring it all out.
It really makes you wonder what's next for us, for Homo sapiens. Will we keep evolving at this crazy pace? Will technology and biology merge? Or are there even bigger challenges coming, stuff we can't even imagine yet?
Big questions, right? Scientists, philosophers, everyone's trying to figure those out. The future is always uncertain, but one thing's for sure, evolution. It never stops. And we're part of that story, whether we like it or not.
This has been quite a journey, wouldn't you say? From the Big Bang to the first life on Earth, from Darwin's finches to human civilization. It's mind-blowing, really, the scope of it all. And we're just a tiny part of this vast, incredible story.
It is humbling, isn't it? And it reminds us that we're all connected. Every living thing on this planet, we're all part of this grand evolutionary tapestry,
Yeah.
woven together by billions of years of change, adaptation, survival. And as we face the future, we got to remember that what we do today, it will shape the course of evolution for everything that comes after us. That's a big responsibility, but also kind of exciting,
Well said. And on that note, we're going to wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating world of evolution. We hope you've enjoyed exploring this incredible story with us.
Keep asking questions, keep learning, keep evolving. Until next time.